Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I keep sinning and I cannot stop. This is a phrase that runs in the minds of many of us, if not all of us. And this is something that bothers the conscience and the minds and the soul and the hearts of many of us, if not all of us. And it could become so destroying to the spiritual state of a person and the emotional state of a person, to the point where he begins to think of himself as being a hypocrite and thinking of himself that he is evil, wrongdoer, corrupt human being, to the point where such people can become so confused and distressed that they are on the verge of leaving Islam altogether. Why? Because they weren't able to deal with this emotional stress that they are experiencing, the fact that they continuously sin and they cannot stop. And they're on the verge of leaving Islam, unfortunately, because they didn't learn how Islam addressed this issue and what solution did Islam offer for this issue. And let me now, my brothers and sisters in Islam, share with you a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that teaches us how a person should deal with such a situation. I keep sinning and I cannot stop. What is the Islamic remedy for this? What is the spiritual remedy for this? My brothers and sisters in Islam, I won't share with you the very famous hadith that we all know, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون. You all know this hadith. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that all the son of Adam are sinners and the best of sinners are those who repent. You know this hadith. I want to share with you something else. Why? Because this hadith that I just shared, that you know about, it's speaking about Bani Adam, the son of Adam, human beings in general, all of us. But I wanted to share with you a special and more specific hadith that speaks about the believer, the believing man, the believing woman, and their relationship with sins, no matter what sin it is. Listen to this hadith very carefully. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, ما من عبد مؤمن إلا وله ذنب يعتاده الفينة بعد الفينة أو ذنب هو مقيم عليه لا يفارقه حتى يفارق الدنيا. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in this hadith, he is describing the relationship of a believer with sins. Now, the relationship a believer has with sins. So he said in this blessed hadith, in this authentic hadith, ما من عبد مؤمن, there is not a single believing slave of Allah except that he commits a sin, except that he has a relationship with a sin. إلا وله ذنب. And the word ذنب came with a tanween at the end. With tanween, this, it's known in Arabic as a nakira. And this nakira, it implies in the Arabic language al-umum, comprehensiveness. In other words, a believer can have a relationship with any kind of sin, whether minor or major. Now, the believer's relationship with a sin is now of two types. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, يَعْتَادُهُ الْفَيْنَةَ بَعْدَ الْفَيْنَةِ. One situation is that he commits this sin and he commits it rarely. So he's not persistent and consistent upon it. So he commits the sin now, and after a few months he commits it again. After 6 months he commits it again. The idea is, the first situation is that he is very rare to commit this sin. The second situation, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, أو ذنب هو مقيم عليه لا يفارقه حتى يفارق الدنيا. The other situation is that a believer, the same believer, could have a relationship with a sin in where he commits very regularly and he's persistent and consistent upon it. And he does not separate and stop himself from this sin until he himself is separated from this worldly life. In other words, until he dies. Yani like a person who shaves his beard. He runs the blade on that which Allah Azza wa Jal made it haram to run upon. And he does this very regularly. He shaves his beard every 2-3 days. Or perhaps like the sister who walks out of her house regularly every day without adhering to the proper Islamic dress code. Not only we're speaking about the scarf, لأن the Islamic hijab is beyond a headscarf. Or it could be that person who just cannot control his tongue and swears and slanders and so on, not once a day, almost 2, 3, 4, 100 times in 1 hour. Or it could be the person that smokes not one cigarette a day, packets and packets a day. For this is the believer's situation. Now Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the beginning part of this hadith explained the problem. This is the problem. A person that commits a sin and cannot stop. What's the solution? Listen to the second half of the hadith. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, إِنَّ الْمُؤْمِنَ خُلِقَ مُفَتَّنًا تَوَّابًا نَسِيًّا إِذَا ذُكِّرَ ذَكَرَ. Allahu Akbar. This is the solution. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says that the believer has been created to be tested. That's right. Every single believer will be tested. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us in many ways. He tests us through calamities and their many forms. He tests us through trials, through fitan. He tests us with sins and so on. خُلِقَ مُفَتَّنًا. But a quality of the believer also, that Allah Azza wa Jal gave him the ability to do so, tawwaban. He's a repenter. Tawwaban suggests that he frequently repents. So just as he frequently makes a sin, commits the sin, he's also frequent and updated in his tawbah. Nasiyya, one of his qualities is nasiyya, that he forgets. Just like our father Adam alayhi salam, when he ate from the forbidden tree in the paradise, Allah Azza wa Jalla, he said, فَنَسِي. He forgot, Adam alayhi salam, nasiyya. إِذَا ذُكِّرَ ذَكَرَ. Whenever he is reminded, he quickly remembers. Whenever the believer is reminded of the horrible nature of sins, whenever he's reminded to fear Allah Azza wa Jal, whenever he's reminded of the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal, ذَكَرَ. He quickly acts upon this reminder, and he quickly gets up and he performs the tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, my brothers and sisters in Islam, the problem is, I keep sinning, I cannot stop. The solution is, this is the cycle you're supposed to follow. Just like you have a cycle of continuous sin, you need to break that cycle and introduce a few more things into this cycle, which is mufattana. You commit this sin, tawwaban. You make a tawbah immediately after the sin. Nasiyya. You'll forget. That's the nature of Bani Adam. You'll make your tawbah and then you'll forget about your tawbah. إِذَا ذُكِّرْ. Whenever he's reminded. This is why it's important to attend Islamic lessons and to listen to Islamic lessons and spiritual reminders. Because as soon as you remember, you make a tawbah once again, then you might fall into the sin again. You might fall into the sin. Mufattanan. Then you follow it up with a tawbah. Then you'll forget. You'll fall into the sin. And then like this, you're reminded and you make a tawbah again. You fall into the sin and so on. This is the cycle that you're supposed to have. And if a person is upon this cycle, in where every time he commits the sin, he makes a tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then bi'idhnillah, such people are upon goodness. Such people are upon goodness. You're not a hypocrite. You're not an evil person. You're not an evil person. You're not a hypocrite. Don't allow the shaitan to take advantage of you and take advantage of your situation. Subhanallah. The problem is, if you continuously perform the sin and don't follow it up with dhikrullah, you don't follow it up with tawbah to Allah, you do not listen to Islamic lessons to remind yourself of the tawbah of Allah and the greatness of Allah Azza wa Jal, which are contributing factors to help you stop the sin, that's where the problem is. These are the evil, wicked, corrupt people, my brothers and sisters in Islam. Understand, we're in a battle with the shaitan, and you're not allowed, you cannot let the shaitan to defeat you in this battle. It's either you or him. If you give up on the mercy of Allah, meaning he defeated you in this battle. And if you continuously, while you're sinning, you updated and you refreshed your tawbah every single time, and you seek knowledge to learn of the greatness of Allah Azza wa Jal, then you have defeated the shaitan.